And welcome back to the France 24 debate. And if you're just joining us, I'm Annette Young. Now, while the world's attention is turning towards America as election day looms, Washington is also keeping a close eye as Kurdish-led Syrian forces carry out an offensive to liberate the Islamic State group's de facto capital of Raqqa in the north of the country. The United States, France and Britain say they will all be providing air support for the offensive, but it's still not clear exactly how they plan to oust the militants from the city. Not to mention, the Kurds have issued a very strong warning for Turkey not to get involved. Now, here to discuss all of this with us is William Jordan, former US State Department official who was formerly based in Damascus. From Washington, Blaise Mishtal, Director of National Security Program at the Bipartisan Policy Centre. And from Istanbul, Rezul Atash, a Turkish journalist and commentator. I want to thank all three of you for joining us today. William, let me start with you. Is it a wise move to begin a campaign in Raqqa when the offensive in Mosul is barely underway?
I'm not sure it makes that much difference if the forces on the ground that could be deployed against Raqqa are ready and in place and can go. I mean, in a sense, it's a good time to be doing it because you will catch the fighters who are trying to come out of Mosul, with the idea of moving back into Syria and into Raqqa, somewhere in between. The bad part of it, or the potentially difficult part of it, is if you don't actually have trained up all of the forces that you need. And people have been saying for a while that it's the Arab forces in this group that are still lacking in number, still lacking in training. It begs the question whether it's premature. The Kurds are presumably ready to go. They're battle hardy, and they would be taking the lead anyway. But if you have Turkey, as much as the Kurds, issuing warnings about what would happen if one or the other tries to interfere with all of this, it's a potential problem. The third thing that I would point out is that there's a question of air assets. Already people are saying that the coalition is not able to deploy the full array of air assets in the battle to take back Mosul. So how much more are they going to be able to devote to the campaign, to take Raqqa? Most experts that I've heard talk about the campaign to retake Raqqa say that it will take months, that the forces are hardly in a position to be able to begin an assault on Raqqa, that they need still to maneuver around and basically cut it off so that they can put the pressure necessary to weaken the defenses and eventually move in. So, but if there's a judgment by the various leaders of the campaign, and the commanders in the field, as well as the coalition, that they have what they consider to be the forces to begin, why not start with the campaign in Mosul? I just would not expect any kind of immediate result, even as we've seen in Mosul.
Certainly, Blaise, Raqqa is home to nearly 200,000, mostly Sunni Arabs, and an estimated 5,000 Islamic State group fighters. Now, this is the capital of the Islamic State group, and like Mosul, they're going to be ferocious in their defence. It's certainly going to be the worst case of urban warfare that we're likely to see, aren't we?
Well, it's quite possible that we'll see even worse, or a preview of what we'll see in Raqqa and Mosul, where we've heard of tunnels being dug, human shields being used, civilians being used as human shields, booby traps everywhere. And Mosul is a much larger city, so I think you have greater potential there for the all-out fighting. But in Mosul, we've also had, I think, a longer time to train up troops. We have not only the Kurdish Peshmerga, but the Iraqi army and police forces that the U.S. has been training, in addition to Shiite militias. So you could have a harder battle in Mosul, but also better troops ready to do that battle. In Raqqa, it's not quite clear what we're going to find yet, and part of that will depend on who's doing the fighting, which isn't clear, as you said in your introduction, and how the battle for Mosul goes, whether fighters will flee from Mosul to Raqqa and reinforce the units there, whether units from Raqqa will move into Mosul to fight, or whether both fights will be conducted simultaneously.
Rizal, let me bring you in from Istanbul. The SDF alliance, which is dominated by the Kurdish YPG militia, has emerged as a key ally of the US-led coalition, and it's leading the fight against the jihadists. But they're also the sworn enemy of your country, and as a result, Turkey will not be taking part in this battle. How do you think this is going to complicate things?
Well, actually, Ankara and Washington differ fundamentally on the role of YPG, and that was actually expected. So just to solve this different approach between Washington and Ankara, the chief of staff of the USA has been in Ankara yesterday and had a meeting with the army chief of Turkey, and the meeting lasted 4.5 hours. And they actually has discussed how to cooperate and how to make it efficient and how to make it clear that it's not going to be against the Turkey's interest as well. So far, we do not have concrete details of the meeting that happened between two chief of staffs, but what we know is that there has been a decision made. One of the top USA Army representative is going to be in Ankara and working closely with the Turkish army, and in case of any problem or conflict, they will be able to immediately to meet. But mainly here, the Turkey's position is that if YPG, which is PKK Syrian offshoot, is a part of this operation, Turkey is not going to take any concrete part, not going to be the part of that operation, because it will be inconsistent. While fighting with the main body of YPG, PKK at home, that will not make sense for Turks to cooperate with a Syrian offshoot in the Syrian soil. And Turkey's criticism to the USA's policy related to the role of the YPG is that PKK is officially on the terror list of the USA and the European Union. So while seeing the main body as terrorist organization, but cooperating with one of its offshoot actually is not consistent. So Turkey is criticizing this inconsistency. So just going back a couple of months ago, Turkey has clearly offered the USA to conduct this operation together. So look, in Mosul, for example, now whether you like it or not.
Can I just ask you this briefly, Rizal? Is Ankara angry by what's happened?
Well, Ankara, I will say yes, it's angry but disappointed as well, because in this case, look, Ankara has a deep disturbance of USA supplying YPG with heavy and conventional weaponry is definitely going to bring lots of security implications to Turkey itself. Just let's keep in mind, just for the last 9 months, Turkey has lost about 800 of its security forces in the fight against PKK. So just recently there has been founded a tunnel that connecting one of the towns in Turkey to an area, a town that is now under the control of YPG in Syria, and that weapons coming through that tunnels to PKK in Turkey. So Turkey is asking this question. At the end of the day, these weapons, these heavy weapons, are going to be handed to the PKK. And Turkey is in a fight for 4 decades, in a fight with the PKK on its own soil.
Rizal, let me just turn around this question now to William. I mean, Turkey is saying that it won't accept a role for the Kurds in the liberation of Raqqa. This clearly is making a messy situation all that much more messier. What impact does it also have on NATO, given that Turkey is a member?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, but which I don't actually think is directly related to the Kurds per se, but it is directly related to President Erdogan's anger over how Washington has tried to manage both the Syrian operations to try to isolate and retake Raqqa, as well as Turkish efforts to try to create some sort of a safe corridor that would be free of Kurds inside Syria. And it's caused Erdogan, for various reasons that have as much to do with his political or internal political situation as with the relationship with Washington and with NATO, to seek some sort of a rapprochement with Russia. And I think that I think that this makes Turkey for Washington a bit of a random element. And in the NATO context, it has, I think, longer-term implications for the U.S.-Turkish relationship and potentially, therefore, for Turkey's relationship with NATO. But, I think that a lot of that is going to depend on Erdogan's internal political calculations as much, if not more, than the immediate question of how to deal with the Kurds and how to deal with the YPG and other, surrogates that cause Turkey problem, which I have to say I agree with. I mean, I agree with this criticism that Turkey has had all along about the YPG, not simply because of its relationship with the PKK, but also because I still believe that the YPG is not entirely to be trusted beyond the struggle against the Islamic State. In terms of the civil war in Syria, there are still questions about its relationship with the regime in Damascus.
In this case, Blaise, let me ask you this. Ankara is wanting another Turkish-backed force to retake the city, not the Kurds, given the mess that is Syria and all of its warring factions. Is that at all possible?
Well, it's hard to imagine how that would be possible at this point, because the road to Raqqa for Turkish forces and Turkish-backed forces leads directly through either YPG territory or through even more ISIS-held territory. So either Turkish forces have to battle their way through Al-Bab, sort of to the northwest of Raqqa, and take a long way around, fighting through a lot of ISIS territory, possibly trying to make their way through Assad government-controlled territory, or they have to blitzkrieg through YPG-controlled territory and fight the YPG on the way to fighting ISIS in Raqqa. And so just logistically at this point, it seems really hard to believe, even if the United States were to want it, even if there were to be an agreement reached about it, that it would be feasible, short of an agreement also with the YPG, which seems unlikely. And I think this is the major shortcoming of U.S. policy, at least when it comes to Raqqa, is that for a long time we've been trying to have our cake and eat it too, work with the YPG on the ground, but maintain our ties with Turkey and hope that Turkey is going to help with the fight in ISIS. And really, unfortunately, the reality is, and Ankara has been very clear in signaling this, that you can't have both. It's either Turkey or the YPG, and I think the U.S. hasn't chosen and hasn't done enough to try to make its current policy of both realistic. And so it's gone to the point where we're setting ourselves up for a conflict between the two. Even if we're able to take Raqqa, it's either going to be with the YPG at the cost of Turkish anger, or it's going to be with Turkey having to fight its way through YPG-controlled territory first. And so I think the unfortunate reality is the result of U.S. policy is going to be, even once Raqqa is taken, even once ISIS is defeated, further identity-driven conflict in the region is likely.
Rizal, the other complication in all of this is that we've got a US election, and by Wednesday morning you could be dealing with a very different person. In terms of where Turkey is standing, is there one party better on this as opposed to another, or is it just a generic problem with US policy, full stop?
If you look at the nature of Turkey's relationship with the USA, you will see that mostly it's based on the security perspective. It lacks of the economic perspective or sociological or political perspective. So basically, it's about the security. Turkey has been one of the second biggest, having the second largest army of the NATO. That actually shows that to us. When these two countries are at the same page related to security issues, the relationships are good. And when they do not meet at the same page, or when they differ from the perspective of the security, the relationships just between these two countries get sour. when you look at Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump actually related to the foreign policies, especially the Middle East, I do not think that Turkey sees a remarkable difference between two candidates. So in this case, I wouldn't say that Turkey would prefer one of the candidates to be the next president of the USA because the policies that are coming from both candidates are kind of similar for Turkey. So Turk's position is wait and see. But besides that, I will not agree that Turkey's assumption to create a safe zone was not based on a free Kurd safe zone. Look, Turkey actually recommended or offered this option to the international community in 2012 when YPG was not in the control of that area. So now we just have seen that after a couple of years, that we have seen that how people have been going through a brutal process coming from ISIS, coming from YPG, the ethnic cleansing that happened in Tel Abyad, and coming from the regime or any other actors. Even the USA Secretary of the State, John Kerry, also had actually admitted that it will be much better for people to have a safe zone. And German Chancellor Angela Merkel also, just a couple of months ago, has cleared that if the international community could work closely, that will be one of the best options in Syria to stop the refugee flows to the Europe and to keep people in a safe area. So it was not based on a free Kurdish area safe zone. So beside that, what is the relationship? How is it relevant that we suppose the Raqqa offensive with the Turkey's internal politics?
But can I just say this at this point, Rasul? At the end of the day, there is a common enemy for everybody at this table, that being the Islamic State group. As William and Blaise just point out, Washington's been in a very difficult position where it's having to sort of please both sides, keep everybody on the same page. At some point, in order to get rid of this jihadist organisation, something had to happen. Are you saying that, as far as Turkey is concerned, it would have been happier for it to have waited until an alternative force could be built up before going ahead and entering Raqqa?
Just let's see the Turkish-backed, moderate and internationally recognized legitimate Free Syrian Army fighters have made a huge gains in north of Syria against ISIS since August. Now that forces has 25 kilometers of stretch into Syria, and that areas has been cleared from ISIS. So to suppose that YPG is the only capable, organized and capable unit to fight against ISIS actually is not a true assumption when you look at this success that has been made by the Free Syrian Army. Look, the USA's support has never been sufficient and in-depth enough to the Free Syrian Army. The main question is that, is it a right and true policy to try to retake an Arab-dominant city by non-Arab forces, which are already rivals now? So that is going to bring a social...
Rasul, let me ask that question now to my two other panelists. What would you say to that, William?
Well, I would agree with the point that has been made a couple of times, including by Rasul in Turkey, that so much of what has afflicted and has been a problem for the United States in dealing not just with Islamic State, but with Syria in general, is that everything has been done on a very improvisational level. Washington has not really had a chance to sort of research and pick the best partners to do the job. Indeed, it's important for everybody to remember that it was only a little over 2 years ago, after the deaths of 2 journalists at the hands of Islamic State, that the United States decided that it needed to get involved directly, militarily, to deal with Islamic State in Syria. Everything that the United States has tried to do to bring together, the coalition of forces to fight against the Islamic State, either to liberate Raqqa or in some way keep the Islamic State off balance, has largely failed because of a whole host of geopolitical realities and a number of contradictions that are inherent in the grander anti-IS coalition. You know, a year and a half ago, President Erdogan, for whatever domestic political reasons he had, decided to reignite his conflict with the Kurds in a way that has radicalized the situation, not just within Turkey, but also within Syria. And so the United States has found itself, very much torn betwixt and between, trying to figure out how to make all of this work. And I think the YPG was not the ideal candidate to be leading the charge against Islamic State. But in the end, it was the only one that came together as a cohesive and effective fighting force. And the United States has been required to live with that and to push the YPG forward as it has, even over Turkish objection.
Blaise, Mishtal in Washington, do you have anything to follow up to what William and Rasul have just been saying on that point?
Yeah, I think I'd go even a little further than William did, and which is say that the U.S. cooperation with YPG is actually a direct result of Turkish actions. If you look back to 2014, there was a turning point, which was the ISIS siege of the Syrian Kurdish city of Kobani, where tens of thousands of civilians were fleeing, and the city, which was on the border with Turkey, looked like it was about to fall. Turkey did not allow the Kurdish civilians to enter its territory to try to flee the violence, and refused to provide assistance to the Kurds who were trying to fight ISIS. At that point, I think it became clear to the United States that Turkey was not interested in fighting ISIS and was more interested in the Kurdish issue than it was about the jihadist threat that was growing in Syria. And I think at that point, when the Syrian Kurds actually fought back, pushed back ISIS, saved their own city, it became clear that they were the only game in town when it came to fighting ISIS on the ground.
Blaise,
I think what we've seen, yes.
I'm just going to say at this point I'm going to bring in Rasul because we're quickly running out of time. Very quickly, Rasul.
Sorry. So that is my question to my friends in Washington. He said that Turkey did not allow the Kurdish refugees to get into its own soil. Just within 3 days, 197,000 of Kurds from Kobani entered into Turkey without being asked about their IDs. So far, we have seen that how difficult it is when 300,000 of the Syrian refugees got in front of Europe's doors. It paralyzed the European Union. Just Turkey, within 3 days, got 197 recorded refugees from the city of Kobani. And beside that, Turkey has supplied the coordination of ISIS position to the USA forces by that time. The third point is that Turkey allowed the Peshmergas to use its soil, 600 kilometers of its oil soil, to bring the weapons, the conventional heavy weapons from north of Iraq to Kobani to fight against ISIS. So how is it possible to say that Turkey did not allow the Kurds to get into its soil and did not cooperate enough to fight against ISIS? These are the facts.
Rasul, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, this is a shortened version of the France 24 debate, and no doubt this conversation will continue. I'm going to have to leave it there and thank my guests, that being, of course, William Jordan, Blaise Mishtal and Rasul Atash there from Istanbul. And it's time now for Media Watch. Joining me now in the studio is our Media Watch editor, James Creedon, and we've been talking there about Raqqa, but we're going to change topics and head back to the old US of A and, of course, the election.
Absolutely, and the countdown is on, Annette. Let's take a look at Politico.com, and they have literally integrated a countdown onto their homepage. 10 hours to go now before 3 towns in New Hampshire vote at midnight. So they're keeping a very close eye on each and every one of the states and the countdown. the headline on the New York Times website, "The last sprint in a tight race after a twist in the email case." And of course, that was what dominated coverage over the last 24 hours, the exoneration of Hillary Clinton in the infamous round 2 of the email
What a
probe.
roller coaster ride that's been, hasn't it?
Indeed. Now, the question, I suppose we'll have to wait and see whether or not it is definitively closed. But in any case, a lot of questions about whether or not the review was realistic, reviewing 650,000 emails in 8 days. A lot of pro-Trump individuals saying it's simply impossible. Over at Wired.com, they're saying, yes, it is possible. With automated searches and filtering tools, it is possible to review hundreds of thousands of emails in that space of time, and it's ridiculous to suggest that it would have to be done manually. So if the email probe by the FBI was one thorn in Hillary Clinton's side in the last week, WikiLeaks has been a consistent thorn, and they are continuing to release now the latest batch of DNC emails, over 8,000 of them. They seem to be a little bit lost in terms of the coverage on a lot of the news websites, I think, which are focused on the final sprint, etc. And WikiLeaks has also been hit by what they claim is a targeted cyber attack. So look, lots and lots of stuff. I just want to show you one slightly bizarre angle, which comes back, I think, at every US election. Celebrities wanting to up sticks and get out of the US of A should their preferred candidate not win. George Stephanopoulos.
Where they want to go. They want to go and live in Sydney. Well, they're going to have a lot of money to buy property in Sydney.
This is it. You took the words out of my mouth. A lot of people looking at Australia, in fact. Well, I think Sure is looking at planet Jupiter, but quite a few people have been looking at Australia. And there's this quite amusing article in the Daily Telegraph where they say every 4 years, America's stupidest celebrities announce they will leave the US if their preferred candidate doesn't win. These dopey celebs, it's being very unfair really, nominate Canada as their future home, but mostly they stay put, is what they're pointing out. And they don't seem to want these celebrities, an influx of American celebrities in Australia.
James,
Nobody's coming to Paris because they know that there are going to be elections here early this year.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave
Frying
it there.
pan into the fire.
We're going to have to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much.